Budget cameras are now more affordable than ever. You can finally get a high quality camera that delivers gorgeous results for just a few $100s. But the right camera for you will depend on your shooting style. So let's break down the best budget cameras based on the lowest price and the best value. And each camera is made for a specific style of shooting, so make sure to pick the right one. One of my favorite budget cameras for beginners and casual photographers that want something relatively affordable for about $300 is the Sony A6000, and I'll leave links down below for the best pricing on the A6000 and the other cameras we talk about. The A6000 is actually about 10 years old, but that's also why it's so good. It has a 24 megapixel APS-C size sensor, which is pretty standard for this type of camera, and a lot of the newer Sony cameras still use a 24 megapixel sensor. What makes the A6000 special is that this sensor has a very unique color palette. It has rich and vibrant hues with very flattering skin tones, and I can only describe the look of this camera as nostalgic or filmic. And a lot of us are trying to get this look through editing. And if you do want to adjust your colors, the A6000 also shoots in 12-bit RAW, which gives you a lot of room in editing. And the A6000 also shoots at a blazing fast speed of 11 frames per second, which is fast enough for any type of photography, even moving subject matter. The autofocus is also reliable in most scenarios, and for 99% of people out there, it's more than enough. The A6000 does shoot video, but it's not great, and there's much better options later in this video. The reason I love the A6000, apart from the colors, is the shooting experience. The body is compact, lightweight, pocket size, making it perfect for travel, and this is a camera you can pretty much always have on you. It's a very solid metal build with a nice grip, and the button layout is almost identical to modern Sony cameras, so it doesn't feel like an old camera at all when you're using it. And the A6000 still uses the Sony E mount, which Sony cameras use even today on their most expensive cameras. So you literally have access to thousands of lenses. You can pick up older lenses for super cheap or upgrade to the newer lenses when you're ready. The A6000 also has a viewfinder, built-in flash, and a tilt screen, which is really rare to see at this price point, but these are things that everybody wants in a beginner camera. The only downside of the A6000 is that it absolutely burns through batteries, so definitely keep a spare on you, but luckily third-party batteries are also very cheap. So if I was starting photography today on a budget, I would 100% pick up the A6000. The colors are amazing, it shoots fast, great autofocus, and I love the body and design. It's a really easy and fun way to practice photography, and for $300, it's an absolute steal. Now, if you want a newer camera that also excels at photos and videos for about the same price of $350 USD, check out the Canon M50 Mark I, which I also own and absolutely love. It's a small and compact camera that's very travel friendly. It is a plastic body, but it's still a very solid and well-made camera. It has a nice grip that's easy to hold, and the button layout is very user-friendly. One of my favorite things about this camera is the electronic viewfinder, the built-in flash, and it also has an input for external audio, which is really rare to see in a camera at this price point. It also has a side articulating screen that is 100% touch enabled, so you can use it for touch autofocus, touch menus, touch settings, and if you're coming from a smartphone, it's a very similar experience. From a design perspective, this camera is perfect for travel and lifestyle shooting, and it also uses the Canon EF-M mount that has tons of affordable lenses, and you can also adapt the Canon EF lenses to this camera, so upgrading your camera setup is really easy with tons of lens options. And the battery life is very solid. It will easily last you an entire day of casual shooting. Inside the Canon M50, you have a 24 megapixel APS-C size sensor, which is pretty standard for this type of camera. But since it's a newer camera, the image processing is much better. You get sharp and vibrant photos with Canon's signature color science. The colors are very true to life with a slight hint of warmth, and the skin tones are very flattering. So if you don't like the vintage look of the A6000, this camera is probably better for you. And it also shoots at 14-bit RAW as opposed to the 12-bit RAW in the A6000, which means the quality from the raw photos is much higher, and this camera is much better for heavy editing. And the Canon M50 can also shoot super fast at 10 frames per second, which is perfect for any kind of photography. And the newer autofocusing system is much more accurate and faster as well. It also has face tracking and touch autofocus. In terms of videos, it shoots full HD at 1080p at 24 up to 60 frames per second for 2x slow motion, which is perfect for vlogging, lifestyle, and a little bit of slow motion. And it also shoots 120 frames per second for 5x slow motion, but this is only in 720p, which is kind of low res, but it's nice to have that feature. Now, the M50 does shoot 4K. However, there's a pretty significant crop on your image which zooms your image way in, so it's harder to get a wide shot, and the autofocus is also a lot slower in 4K. So if you need high quality 4K video, this is not your best option, and there's actually two much better cameras later in this list. For 99% of people out there who just need 1080p video for vlogs and high quality photos, this camera is almost perfect. The Canon R50 Mark I is without a doubt the best option for someone on a budget that's also a hybrid shooter. Now, so far we've looked at my pick for the best budget photo camera and the best budget hybrid camera. Now, if you're someone that's focused on video and is leaning towards the cinematic filmmaking side, finding a good budget camera is very tough. Most cameras at this price point for under $500 really don't have the features you need, but the Lumix G5 Mark I might be the answer. For around $500 body alone and $700 with a lens. The GH5 uses a 20 megapixel micro four thirds sensor, which is smaller than even APS-C, but that actually gives you some pretty big advantages over the larger sensor cameras. One of the biggest reasons being the GH5 can shoot 4K up to 30 frames per second in 10-bit color at 400 megabits per second. That is almost as good as the FX30, which is a $1,700 to $2,000 camera. And it also has the Vlog Cinema profile for color grading that gives you 10 usable stops of dynamic range. And surprisingly enough, that's actually very close to the Canon R6 Mark II and the Nikon Z6 III, which are $2,000 cameras. So when it comes to editing and color grading, you can really push the footage in the GH5 and it will not fall apart. And there's tons of examples of people who've made amazing short films with it. One thing to note, the 4K 60 in this camera is limited to 8-bit, but it does shoot 1080p up to 180 frames per second for incredible slow motion. On top of that, it also supports open gate shooting, capturing a taller and more square frame, letting you shoot for both vertical and horizontal content at the same time, which is perfect for someone shooting for social media. And open gate is also the best way to shoot anamorphic footage for that ultra cinematic look. And you can also grab a Sura 35 or 50mm anamorphic lens used for $200 to $300. And speaking of lenses, because the micro four thirds sensor is smaller, it also needs less glass in the lenses, which means the lenses for this camera are also much cheaper compared to APS-C and full frame. And the GH5 also shoots photos at a really impressive speed of 12 frames per second in 14-bit RAW. So if you wanted to use this for photos as a hybrid shooter, this is a totally valid camera. And one of the best features in the GH5 and Lumix cameras in general, and why people love this brand, is the in-body stabilization. It's honestly almost as good as a gimbal, making handheld footage incredibly smooth, which is perfect for run and gun shooting. The biggest drawback of the Lumix GH5 is that the autofocus is a bit slow and it really does not keep up with fast-moving subject matter. I do recommend actually using this camera with manual lenses and fully embracing this as a filmmaking camera. And the design of the GH5 absolutely supports that. It has tons of customizable buttons and dials, and everything a serious video shooter would want. And it also has a side articulating touchscreen with full touch controls, and the body is also weather sealed so you can take it anywhere. If you're a beginner filmmaker or YouTuber who wants to create cinematic video content, but you're on a pretty tight budget, nothing else at this price point is going to offer you this level of video quality, and the only real drawback is the autofocus. Now let's move on to the more modern cameras. So far we've only talked about the older budget models. And if you want all the fancy bells and whistles of a modern camera, we're going to have to bump up the price just a little bit, nothing crazy, but you have been warned. Now the first of these cameras is about as close as you can get to a perfect hybrid camera for beginners, because it literally does everything for photos, vlogging, lifestyle, and even serious content creation for about $550 used or $750 brand new, and that is the Canon R50. At first glance, it looks pretty similar to the Canon M50, but it's a very different camera. However, it does keep all of the positive aspects of the Canon M50's design. It's a compact, lightweight design, simple button layout, and it also has a brand new intelligent auto mode that handles everything for you, so even if you don't know anything about how to shoot with cameras, you'll still get great results. The viewfinder and touchscreen are also much higher resolution than the Canon M50, leading to a better shooting experience. And the touchscreen is also 100% touch sensitive over everything, including autofocus. But my favorite feature is the ability to connect your phone directly to your camera, not just for transferring your photos, but also using your phone as a live view monitor to see everything your camera sees, and also remotely control your camera. The battery life is also very solid with all-day battery for casual shooting, But if you're a power user, you will definitely want a spare battery. And you can also charge your camera through the USB-C port, so you don't need to lug around your charger. From a design perspective, this is nearly perfect for beginners. Inside the Canon R50, you have a 24 megapixel sensor with improved image processing that delivers amazing results. The colors look absolutely fantastic like every Canon camera, with very true to life yet vibrant colors, and it captures people and skin tones really well. Now this camera does shoot 6 frames per second, and this camera also shoots 14-bit RAW for serious editing. The autofocus in the R50 is fantastic and as good as a pro camera, with face and eye detect and also AI subject detect for people, animals, and vehicles, so even if your subject matter is moving a lot, the autofocus will work just fine for both photos and videos. And video is where the Canon R50 really shines and why I think a lot of people should pick this camera up. It shoots 4K at 24 and 30 frames per second with zero compromises. It is literally as good as 4K can get on a budget camera. And the 4K video is also downsampled from 6K, so you get 6K detail and clarity, but in a smaller and easier to edit 4K file. And the R50 also has digital stabilization, which does a decent job at smoothing out handheld footage and vlogging shots. And another video highlight of the Canon R50 is that it also shoots 10-bit color when shooting in HDR-PQ mode for more flexibility with your colors when it comes to editing and color grading and better dynamic range. And it also shoots slow motion at full HD at 60 and 120 frames per second. So if you want a modern hybrid camera that checks all of the boxes with no major compromises and doesn't completely wreck your bank account, the Canon R50 is an amazing choice. Now, next up are my personal favorite cameras that deliver the best value for your money for about $500 to $600 used or $799 new. And that is the Sony ZV-E10 and the Sony A6400. Both cameras have the exact same internals, but the ZV-E10 has a body designed for video and the A64 is designed for photos. Both cameras have a 24 megapixel APS-C size sensor, but with this sensor, you also get the best low light performance at this price level. And both cameras shoot a blazing fast 11 frames per second in RAW with a huge frame buffer. And these are better photo cameras than the Canon R50 or the Canon M50, making both of these cameras one of the best budget photo cameras for shooting action. And the autofocus is extremely fast and accurate with face and eye detect, and in my opinion, it might just be better than the R50 and M50, but these cameras do not have AI subject detect like the Canon R50. As for video, both cameras shoot 4K at 24 and 30 frames per second, and it's also downsampled from 6K to 4K, similar to the Canon R50, so you get absolutely fantastic 4K video. And they also shoot full HD at 60 and 120 frames per second for slow motion. And both cameras also have S-Log and cinema profiles for better dynamic range and color grading. However, it is only 8-bit video, so you can't go too crazy with the colors, where the Canon R50 does have 10-bit video. However, in my opinion, S-Log is a lot easier to grade and manage than HDR-PQ mode, and if you look around on the internet, there's tons of people that have made amazing things with the ZV-E10 and the A6400. Now, when it comes to design, the ZV-E10 is designed for vloggers and YouTubers with a simplified button layout, a side articulating screen, and a built-in microphone. Although if you're serious about your audio, you'll want to add an external mic. And the A6400, on the other hand, is a photo-style body with a more traditional mirrorless camera design. There's no built-in mic, but it has a flash and a viewfinder instead. And the screen on the back is a tilt screen for low angle and high angle shots, and it flips up if you want to see yourself. And neither camera has full touch controls, but the ZV-E10 does have touch autofocus. So if you're more into video, get the ZV-E10, but if you're more of a photographer, get the A6400. But either camera will be great for someone that wants the best bang for their buck in a more modern budget camera. And if you want to make sure you get the best pricing on any of the cameras we talked about today, make sure to check out the links in the description down below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.